All right. Hey there. This is the first lesson for our ACT from the Viking Initiative for Building Excellence. So here we go. So yeah, the first lesson, this is just going to be an introduction and some tips that y'all can use while writing the ACT. So yeah, first let's go over why you guys should actually take the SAT or ACT. It's There are three reasons why. It's an easy way to prove that you're academically ready for college. Because even if you aren't in the top percentiles of your graduating class by GPA, you can still prove to colleges that you are academically competitive, just with one test. So think of this as like an opportunity um, to put yourself in that top bracket of academics, and it's just one test. So if you can crack it, then it's a really good opportunity. Apart from that, you can have an advantage while applying to scholarships or summer programs. Especially state universities give scholarships to those with high GPAs and SAT or ACT scores. So yeah, you can get some money for it. And then summer programs and private scholarship applications usually include a section where you can report scores, and like actually reporting these scores rather than not reporting them can boost your chance of acceptance, because again, you can handle that workload, you can handle thinking competitively in that manner. And then yeah, don't it also makes you unreliant on the test optional policies that a lot of colleges are revoking. So many top universities such as Harvard, Brown, Yale, and UT Austin and Texas A&M have removed test optional policies after COVID. So yeah, having a good score can never hurt you. Okay, so now let's just go to the ACT. The structure. So there's basically two types of ACTs that you can take. One is the paper ACT, and this is as of July 2025. So one is the paper ACT and one's the computer ACT, and these are going to be two different tests. So for the paper ACT, you have four sections, 215 questions. This is the one that has been there for a long time. This isn't the new one that they're making. So all of the times are going to be similar to 10 years ago. So English, 75 questions, 45 minutes. Math, 60 questions, 60 minutes. Reading, 40 questions, 35 minutes. And science, 40 questions, 35 minutes. This is the ACT that most people have taken um, in the last 10 years. For the computer ACT, which I think they're coming up with in their July exam this year. It's gonna be three sections plus one optional section, which is science. So if y'all want to take science, then you can decide to, but you can also take the test without taking science. So it'll be 131 questions without science and 171 with science. So there's a notable difference in the number of questions. So for each subsection, English has 50 questions, 35 minutes. Math has 45 questions, 50 minutes. Reading, 36 questions, 40 minutes. Science, 40 questions, 40 minutes. The key takeaway here is that obviously the timing seems to be easier on the newer ACT. Um, and yeah, if it's the same level of questions, the same quality of questions, definitely the computer ACT will be easier to take. Now, let's look at the scoring. So, yeah, both the computer and paper ACTs are scored the same way. They may have different curves, but yeah, each section is scored from 1 to 36, and they take the average of your section scores to give you your final composite score, which will be from 1 to 36. So each section has a different curve, and each test also has a different curve. So like the curve for math will not be the curve for English, and yeah. The number So a curve is basically the number of questions wrong and how it affects your total score. And yeah, so some tips on you can maximize your score by just like prepping smartly. If you're taking any AP or IB science, which you're relatively good at, you're keeping up with the content, and you're getting good scores, I recommend you to take the science section of the ACT. Personally, I took AP Physics the year that I took the ACT, and yeah, I found the ACT very easy, the ACT Science very easy because um, of like the exposure I had to AP Physics. Um, Okay, and another thing is digital over paper because of easier timing. I'll go over this later with like actual numbers, but yeah, this is definitely the case. And like to maximize your score, maximize last minute prep on reading and science because it's fewer questions, but it's worth more. So reading and science, it's 35 and 40 questions respectively. There's fewer questions, right? But like it's worth more because every section is counted equally. So if you can maximize your reading and science scores, it can pull up the rest, which is what happened with my ACT. So now a lot of you might be thinking, why should I take the ACT? Like we take the PSAT at school. Won't it just be easier to take the SAT? Now, obviously, that's a good way of thinking, right? You have the PSAT, which will prepare you for the SAT. But say, you didn't do very well on the SAT and you don't really know why. Now, let's look at the key differences, which might explain that discrepancy. So the first thing is that the SAT does not include a science section. It only has like some data analysis questions in the reading section. So it does not include like a specific science section like the ACT does. Another difference is the ACT is a much faster test compared to the SAT. So the old ACT time per question is 49 seconds per question. So this is the paper. New ACT time per question is 58 seconds per question. The SAT time per question is 82 seconds per question. So the reason for this, I suspect, is that the SAT's questions are objectively harder, especially on the reading and the English section for the SAT. It's definitely objectively harder because they're trying to trick you there. They're trying to make you think harder. That's why they're giving you that extra time. Whereas the ACT, it's testing how quickly you can switch between passages, how quickly your brain can read and synthesize information. It doesn't try and trick you as much. So if you're good at reading and synthesizing quickly, the ACT is definitely for you. Apart from that, test takers usually find, yeah, ACT and English and reading easier than the SAT, while the math to be harder. Now, the math, um, there's definitely similarities in the subjects that they cover. Um, Y'all should have definitely taken Algebra 2 to be comfortable while taking either the SAT or the ACT. But the reason why people find ACT math to be slightly harder is because there are topics that aren't really taught in Algebra 2 or even pre-calculus that are covered on the ACT, like, but that aren't really difficult. It's just topics that just aren't taught, like vectors and matrices. And lastly, the ACT has a July test date, and this is great for those wanting to take it during the summer. The SAT does not have like this midsummer um, test date. It only has the June or the August, both very close to school. It doesn't give you that much preparation time. Whereas the July ACT is like the perfect time to take a test, in my opinion. So yeah, making your decision. If you're good at science and test taking in general, think back to your AP exams. Take the ACT. It's definitely a good test for you. So I'll just give you some tips like for each ACT section to round out this video. Firstly, for ACT English, memorize these common grammar rules. Um, this list will be pinned on the WhatsApp group chat. Don't worry. So yeah, memorize those rules and yeah, try to the best of your ability to apply them during the test. Do entire passages so you can preserve continuity because there are questions that ask about most effective choices. in terms of continuity of a passage, and you have to have read the entire passage to understand like the tone and the mood that the author is trying to create. Yeah, so some find unnatural shifts in continuity while you read the passage, and yeah, you can sort of like you can if you read it out in your head, you can see that there's awkward phrasing, there's unnatural shifts, and that's why that answer is incorrect. So the curve wise for English, a 36, if you're aiming for like the top two scores, a 36 is usually 1 to 2 mistakes, and a 35 is usually 3 to 4 mistakes, and this is on the old ACT. So if you sort of have like a 5 question, like you can sort of get 5 questions wrong and still do really well on the test. And yeah, for English, the most difficult aspect is the time. You need to keep your eyes on the clock, even when you're doing practice tests. New ACT is 50 questions, about 45 passages. So try and budget about 7 to 9 minutes per passage. Okay, so for math, as I was saying before, vectors and matrices, you need to practice those uncommon topics and you need to know how to use the TI-84. For those, so for matrices, 2 by 2 determinants, inverses, multiplication, addition, subtraction. Vectors, you need to know dot products, angle in between vectors. Sometimes there's permutation and combinations, but as long as you have the calculator and you kind of understand when to use these, it's really easy. You just have to plug it in. And then for geometry questions, law of sines and cosines, both are very useful. I highly recommend them. So yeah, for math, time yourself diligently. Um, Time pressure is very real, and like you need to keep a lot of time for the difficulty and tediousness of the last 10 questions. And yeah, don't let your ego get in the way of your success. You must practice genuinely, no matter how skilled you are at math. Even if you're 3 years ahead, 4 years ahead in math, ACT math is going to be completely different to whatever you've done. You need to practice it that way. Now, for reading, I'd arguably say this is the hardest section of the ACT due to time, because you have to shift between 4 different passages, which are pretty long passages, and you need to reset really quickly. So you need to budget time wisely. So, like, try and give yourself 2 or 3 minutes at the end to calm down, reset, and check your work. It's difficult, but like when you practice, try and do this. Pick the passage type that you're most comfortable to do with first, gain confidence first to increase momentum, and then be able to synthesize the text quickly, compartmentalize the text into manageable parts that you can understand intuitively. This is really important. And then the last set of tips is for ACT Science. So this is the last part of the exam. The only real difficulty about science is that you'll start feeling tired. So go in with a budgeted time schedule, about 4 to 5 minutes per passage. Take short breaks in between passages, and yeah, if you're getting slightly tired, most of these questions can be answered intuitively, and come back to them if like you're unable to answer them intuitively and like you need to skim through the passage. Know how to read multiple types of data like bar charts, pie charts, tables, scatter plots, box and whisker plots. So yeah, those are used heavily during the ACT science section. So yeah, that's the end of this video. Please visit our website, vikinginitiative.com, for more AP, IB, SAT, and ACT resources. If you have any questions, join the ACT group chat, which will be on the website too if you go into the study group section, and ask our well qualified tutors. Yeah, thanks for watching.